Come on in. Welcome to Idled Out, where we talk all things Survivor. My name is Luke, and today we're talking about the greatest plurality votes in Survivor history. A plurality vote is when a player goes home with half or less of the total votes counted. But because of the way the votes are distributed, often in a scattershot manner, less than half is enough. Getting your way with less than half of the total overall votes is an American institution. However, unlike in real life, in Survivor, this is especially risky and especially difficult to pull off. It requires absolute knowledge of where every vote will fall and absolute control of your allies to ensure that trying to sneakily send someone home with less than half of the majority of votes won't backfire. Lesser players have tried and failed to pull off plurality votes, but most don't even bother, just because of how difficult it is to do successfully. So let's take a look at them. All 5 of these plurality votes are incredibly strategic moves played to perfection by some of the show's best ever strategists. And I'll be ranking them based on both their importance to Survivor history, as well as by their degree of difficulty. One note, I'll be excluding votes where successful idle plays resulted in an otherwise safe player going home, because that's kind of a different thing. Only players who went home with less than half of the final vote tally after idols will be considered. All that said, let's take a look at the greatest plurality votes in Survivor history. At number 5 is Danielle and Cerise plurality vote on Bobby in Survivor Exile Island. In an early sign that Kasaya was the messiest tribe in Survivor history, one of their 2 pre-merge tribal council votes is a bizarre 3-2-1-1 on arguably their strongest physical player. Yes, in a tribe with Courtney, who irritates everyone, Bruce, an outsider likely to flip to Lamina at the merge, and Shane, whose ever-dwindling sanity was hanging by a thread. Somehow the tribe arrives at the consensus that Bobby must go in episode 5. Why? The crime of pooping. But Kasaya can't even do this normally. Most of the tribe is set on voting out either Bruce or Bobby, a duo formed out of their mutual feelings of exclusion from the camp majority. Now, I could watch these two hang out in the toilet, get wine drunk, and rag on Kasaya all day, but Danielle could not. She does not like Bobby because he's, quote, not a gentleman. His ungentlemanly behavior, using this outhouse reward they won for its intended purpose, rather than as a place to store firewood. You know, if there's one thing you can say about the rest of the men on Kasaya, it's that they are gentlemanly. The 3 women successfully navigate around the men on this tribe to get their way by plurality, all 3 putting their votes on Bobby as clueless Bruce votes for Courtney for being annoying, a frustrated Shane votes for Aris as a throwaway because he swore on his son he wouldn't vote for Bobby, and Aris and Bobby vote for Bruce on the belief that the votes were going his way instead. In a more cohesive tribe, Danielle's stubborn refusal to consider anyone other than Bobby as the vote this round could have blown up in her face harder than Bobby blew up the Casa de Charmin, but you know, Kasaya, so she was fine. Still, this ended up being a solid game-advancing move for Danielle, Cerise, and Courtney, even if we did lose one of the most naturally hilarious people to ever play this game frustratingly early. I mean, come on, he was so funny in 5 episodes that they threw him on the f***ing DVD cover. No, I'm not still mad. At number 4 is Marianne's plurality vote on Omer in Survivor 42. This was a game-winning move for Marianne, utilizing otherwise useless extra votes, both advantage and player, to take out the biggest threat in the game. With only 6 players remaining, it was finally time for the unexpectedly dominant Taku 4 to Taku each other out. Initially, it seems like the target might be on Jonathan. Lindsay's been trying to take him out for some time now, and with immunity around her neck and an idol in her pocket, now would seem to be the time to do it. But there's a bigger threat in Marianne's mind, her close ally Omer. Omer is a bigger jury threat, a bigger strategic threat, and wears a much uglier shirt. so taking him out would be a win all around. Marianne approaches Mike and Jonathan about taking the swing at Omer, but at final six, these two want to play things safe and go for an easy Romeo boot for what seems like the 7th or 8th time this season. Say the line, Mike.
Put 4 votes on Romeo.
Well, Marianne didn't come to Survivor to play things safe at Final 6, with Lindsay and Omer voting Jonathan, and Jonathan and Mike voting Romeo, and everyone thinking Marianne's on their side. Marianne comes up with the perfect plan. Her and Romeo can use her extra vote advantage and put 3 votes on Omer and take him out 3-2-2. The jury's reaction, as well as Omer's, says it all. In a round where everyone else was content to play it safe, Marianne pulled off the move of the season, wowing the jury and sending someone she knew would appreciate their own blindside to champion her game to them at Ponderosa. It's one of the best moves of the new era, bar none. And in hindsight, an especially bad move for Mike, who had the opportunity to be on board with the move of the season, but instead gave Marianne an incredible move all her own by choosing the safe option and resting on his laurels. Laurel, actually. At number 3 is the Toggy 4's plurality vote on Gretchen at the merge of Survivor Borneo. Let's go back to the summer of 2000, a more innocent time where this was still the worst Star Wars movie, this was all the Pokemon there were, and this was quaintly called the Merger. When Toggy and Pagong merged together as one tribe in Survivor Borneo's 7th episode, no one really knew what was going to happen. This hadn't been done before, and the tribal summit attended by Sean and Jenna was less about ironing out how this whole merger thing was going to work than it was the producers plying them with wine and trying to get them to hook up. Sorry, Jenna, he's got to hook up with girls A through I before he gets to you. 6 people on the new Ratana tribe, all of Pagong and Sean, are under the impression that everyone will just vote their conscience at this first vote, and the person who is liked the least will go. But the alliance of Rich, Kelly, Rudy, and Sue realize that against a disorganized Pagong and an alphabetically voting Sean, they can dictate the vote however they'd like. The alliance does something here that was shocking and hated by much of the audience at the time. They vote together. In an alliance? It is the most basic Survivor strategy there is now, but many thought this was outside of the spirit of the game. And adding insult to injury, they target Gretchen, the kindest and hardest working member of Pagong, and the one person who could have rallied this group together. In a vote breakdown we will never ever see again. 4-1-1-1-1-1-1. Again, voting together sounds obvious now, but more than half of the tribe didn't even know or believe the game could or should be played this way. But in aligning and taking out their biggest threat from the opposing side, the Toggy 4 laid out a blueprint of Survivor strategy that is still used every single round of Survivor today. Have the numbers, vote together, take out threats. A blueprint not as used today, Sean's alphabetical voting strategy. You know, we were actually robbed. If this became the meta, Zayn totally wins the game. At number 2 is Tony's plurality vote on Sophie in Survivor Winners at War. In a season where Tony absolutely dominated strategically, this may be his best move. At the final 9 of Winners at War, Tony and Sophie are aligned. Sort of. They're aligned through Sarah. In real life, Tony and Sarah are good friends, and on Survivor, Sarah and Sophie spent a lot of time bonding after the swap. They're genuinely close. Tony rightly believes that although he, Sarah, and Sophie are together right now, Sophie will ultimately pull Sarah away from him. When Tony wins immunity, he puts on a masterclass of how you should run around where you can't be voted out. With the majority alliance splitting votes between the two players on the bottom, Michelle and Jeremy, Tony comes up with a wild plan on the thinnest of margins to get Sophie out. He enlists his ally Nick, plus Michelle and Jeremy, who had no choice but to come along with him, to put 4 votes on Sophie. With the majority splitting and Tony and Nick defecting, that's enough to send Sophie home 4-3-2. The Sophie vote is the most crucial of the season, in my opinion. If Tony wasn't winning this season, Sophie was. Sophie and Tony were working together, but not for long. And Sophie had the best connections in the game and was putting together a coalition of herself, Sarah, Ben, Denise, and Kim, and her shot at Tony was coming sooner rather than later. Not only did this move get out Tony's biggest threat, but it also paid dividends long term. Voting out Sophie forced Sarah and Ben to work with him to the end game because they had nowhere else to go. It bought him the goodwill of Jeremy, who was otherwise next on the chopping block. Oh, and Sophie also had an idol in her pocket. I also failed to mention that Tony did all this while having just been extorted for a king's ransom of fire tokens from the Edge by 2 players he never even met in the game. Tony had to cough up 6 fire tokens or else lose both his vote and his shot at immunity this round, which would have kneecapped this incredible plan before it even started. Most players wouldn't have even been able to get past the randomly being extorted by people who were voted off 25 days ago phase of this episode, let alone dictate a pitch-perfect outcome to the vote for yourself with less than half of the votes. But that's just Tony. Literally everything he did this season was pretty much perfect. Okay, jury's still out on that ladder. The greatest plurality vote of all time is Cerise 3-2-1 on Courtney in Survivor Exile Island. The more I think about this, the more I think it deserves to be in the conversation for greatest move of all time. Seriously, at the final 6 of Exile Island, Terry's immune again, shocker, so the majority Kasaya alliance is finally forced to turn on itself. This is the point in the game where everyone's starting to think about who they want sitting next to them at the final 2. And let me tell ya, Courtney is the belle of the ball. A fire-dancing, turtle-loving, granola hippie so obnoxious, Shane threatened to kill her and faced 0 repercussions. Everyone is clamoring to take Courtney to the end as an easy win, but especially Terry and Shane. During the reward challenge this round, Cerise and Danielle have the same revelation, that Courtney's got a one-way ticket to Final Tribal Council. At camp, Shane lets slip to Cerise that he intends to take Courtney to Final 2. And off at the reward, Terry, Danielle, and Courtney make a Final 3 pact. And naturally, thinking that Terry will win immunity, Danielle asks him who he will take if he wins the final immunity. Let's just say that Terry's poker face isn't so great when he swears to Danielle that he'll take her. Knowing her chances of winning immunity are low, and with everyone else seemingly hoping to take Courtney to the end, Cerise orchestrates an incredible plan. She convinces Courtney and Terry they're going to vote for Aris, convinces Shane they're going to vote for Danielle, but then loops in Aris and Danielle on the real plan, to get Courtney out. With 3 votes out of 6, Cerise gets out the one player everyone wants to sit next to at the end to increase her shot of being there instead. It's an incredible move as she pitches the perfect names to the perfect people, preying on Shane's dislike of Danielle and belief that he was running the show to get him to vote for her, tricking Courtney into believing she was in a new majority alliance, and using the trust she'd built with Aris, as well as Danielle's similar belief that Courtney was going to Final Tribal to get them on her side. And in one of the greatest moves in Survivor history, Courtney is flabbergasted. She is sent to the jury. Sorry, Bruce. Got nothing else for ya. If you're feeling more gentlemanly than the boys of Kasaya, like and subscribe and I'll get you more Survivor content just like this. Until next time, don't get idled out.